Welcome everyone to another episode of Slasher Scotty. I am your host, Scotty McCoy, and I have a treat for you all tonight. I have Troy Oelke, and he is a Friday the 13th theoretician who has a lot of theories about the Friday the 13th franchise, and I have been looking for this interview for so long. Hi Troy, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I am doing great. I've been waiting for this interview for a long time now. I mean, since Greg basically got me your number and set this up, and I'm really excited to start diving into Friday the 13th.
Well, fantastic.
Awesome. So we're gonna go in like the order of the movies. I wrote them out. So we'll start off with the 1980 Friday the 13th, and the first question I got is what are your theories on the marriage and relationship of Mrs. Voorhees and Jason's father, Elias?
Okay, so I would like to first state that my theories are off the movies themselves. I ignore all graphic novels, books, stories, comics, any of that. And so I have put in my own. My whole point is fixing the timeline.
Right.
Because as you know, there's a lot of gaping holes and stuff. So I've been working on fixing that. Now, so what I have for the relationship between Elias and Pamela is, in the late 30s, they met and had a whirlwind romance. They got married right away, too early. By the second year, everything was getting really rocky. And so they had a pretty rocky marriage. And then, he did a lot of, he was a hunter and a fisher, worked a lot at the mills, and he did logging, and he did kind of a lot of different stuff. So he didn't have one exact job all the time, but he was always working. And so their marriage was terrible. I mean, but it was really rocky. He was getting more and more abusive and distant, and so and he was accusing her of having an affair, and then she got pregnant. So this kind of settled everything down, and they thought perhaps this is maybe what they need. Maybe they could salvage this relationship now that they have a child. And as the pregnancy went along, he seemed to be more and more suspicious, more, wondering if that's his baby and getting kind of like that way. And then she had the child. And when he saw that thing, he was like, holy shit, and so he was even more now, it was that hit him on top of his suspicions. So now he's not even sure if he wanted this thing, or whatever. So they tried to just go on about their lives and be a family. And he just, after this, it was the last straw with the kids. He started to really start to drink. And then the more he drank, the more he resented this child, and the more he accused her of having an affair. And so what I have is she was cooking breakfast one morning in the cabin, big cast iron skillet, she's frying some bacon and stuff, and little Jason's in his high chair by the table, and Elias comes in the room and sits down kind of next to Jason, in this typical bad mood, reeking like alcohol, and Jason knocks over his food bowl, and it kind of splashes all over the table and shit. Well, Elias just backhands it. Boom! Just backhands this kid, knocks his whole high chair and everything over. Well, by the time he could turn back around, Pamela had turned around with that cast iron skillet, and she beat his skull into just powder. I mean, she just beat him to where crushed the side of his face in, like smashed his eye socket down, burned it all up. She just beat him and beat him and beat him and beat him till he was, dead or dying. And then So then, and then she, basically, at this point, Jason his chair had fallen over and he had gotten out of his chair and he had stood up now and he was holding a knife and he was like shaking and that's when Pamela, looked over at Elias on the floor and looked at Jason and said, "It's all done. You've done your job well, and Mommy is pleased. Now come to Mommy. Mommy has a reward for you." So Jason looks down at Elias and starts to squeeze the knife handle again. Pamela said, "Jason, Mother is talking to you." Directs him over towards Elias, points down to his bloodied face and says, "Come and kneel down." He kneels and looks at Elias and he smiles. Pamela says, "That's my good boy." And then Elias slips into unconsciousness. That's when she dumps his body in the lake. And at that point, she becomes very free. She feels.
All right. So then the burning question is, if the ending isn't a dream, what happened to Paul? What's his fate?
Paul was killed.
Okay.
And he was taken back to the shack.
Okay.
We can gather this just from making it up because of what we know. Now, like I said, I ignore all other, graphic novels and stories and stuff. But the fact is, there is a picture of Paul's dead body on the back of one of the VHSs.
Right.
And it appears as though he may be in the shack. So it just made perfect sense due to the fact that Ginny, being wheeled out by the ambulance, was asking where's Paul. So we knew he was not on scene at that point. So he was taken away. Mm-hmm. And I believe he was murdered with the half of a pitchfork that Ginny had in her hand when she was knocked unconscious when he came crashing through the window.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay. So how did Jason then happen to find Alice at her apartment? And is Jason really the killer of Part 2? Because after all, due to Part 3 picking up right after Part 2, and in Part 2 Jason is a hillbilly with hair, and in Part 3 Jason is bald, what is your theory on this entire story?
Boy, am I glad you asked that question. Okay, so here's the deal.
Okay.
When Pamela beat Elias to death,
okay,
she drug his body, threw him in the back of the pickup, mm-hmm. drove him down to Crystal Lake, and dumped his body in there. Yeah. Well, he did have severe brain damage, massive fractures, broke teeth, crushed eye socket, all that. But he survived.
Right.
And Elias crawled out on the other side of the lake, and being like I said, he's brain damaged. He's really, really messed up. He has kind of flashes of reality come and go, some coherency here and there. Well, he hunts, he fishes, he whatever. So he got right to survival skills while he's all fucked up. He's really, really messed up.
Right.
So he spends time gathering up pieces and parts and things to build a shelter. And Elias gets this shack all built up and starts living out of it and just lives in the woods, and that's what he's going to do for the rest of his life. Well, while collecting things for the shack, one of the things he collected was a bathroom mirror. Mm-hmm. And when he looked in that mirror, he saw his face. Now, he went from a good-looking country boy to someone whose face is fucking bashed in. His eye is sunken down halfway down his face because his eye socket was so crushed in, teeth bashed out. The side of his face is burned. It's all, you can see it in the end, but it's all burned. And so he could not stand the look of himself. So he fucking took a potato sack and he made a fucking mask to cover his fucking humiliatedly ugly face. Mm-hmm. Now, he only cut out one eye hole because the crushed eye doesn't even work anymore.
Okay.
So Elias is the killer in Part 2. Mm. Now, Elias is the hood-wearing fella that was running around. So what happened here was after he lived in that cabin, or in that shack for quite a while, with his traumatic brain injury and all that shit, he went out and was hunting and trapping one day. And there in the reeds right off the shore was Jason. Now, I'm not sure if he 100% recognized Jason or not, but he just reached down and grabbed him and threw him over his fucking shoulder and went on about hunting. And when he was done hunting, he also drugged the kid home, kind of threw him in a little room there with a mattress. So he would then kind of like, kick him a bowl of some kind of slop or some leftover bones or whatever the guy was, didn't finish. He was not a good father. Not a good father. He wasn't training Jason. He was basically teaching Jason that I'm not going to help you, but if you learn to help yourself, you'll survive. And basically you can learn by watching me.
Right.
And so, he would feed him a little bit from time to time, but he immediately started up teaching him how to fish and trap and doing all this other stuff. And, he would get like little memories from time to time, flashbacks of his family life, early life. And so he even went out and he managed to rustle up a high chair, which you can see in the cabin in the movie. There's a high chair in the middle of that shack. Now, Jason was too big for this high chair at this time, being however, 11 years old or something. He was too big for a high chair either way. So they never ended up using it, but Elias's brain doesn't work quite right, but that's kind of how he ended up piecing that together and putting that, that's how that high chair ended up in there. But, so, he was going to teach him to take care of himself, basically. That's the only way he was going to survive, is to learn to take care of himself, and that's what he did.
Right.
He learned to hunt, fish, trap, build, and this is all on top of what he learned at Camp Crystal Lake, like his merit badges and knots and those kind of things.
Right.
So he learned to butcher animals and how to cook them and eat them. Well, one night, Jason was actually asleep. He usually followed Elias around on almost everything he did. But he was asleep one night, and Elias went out night hunting. Well, he was on... He heard a huge commotion, looked across the lake, and there were two women fighting. And, when he saw people, he usually watched, because he didn't want anybody around, but he always watched to see who was in in his neck of the woods or whatever. And then a minute later, he realized that was Pamela, and then saw her beheaded.
Okay.
So then, what Elias did was he made his way around the lake as fast as he could, which obviously took a while. By the time he got out there, Alice had sailed off in the canoe. Well, Elias picked up Pamela's head, looked at it. While he's looking at it, he's getting all kinds of the earlier flashbacks, but more of the better times of flashbacks, And so, he began to look around, and then anger started to set back in, and he realized that Alice had gotten away. And so he made his way into the camp, and he went into the file cabinet, and he looked through the files until he saw the one with the picture of Alice attached to it.
Okay.
So he took that. It has her address, her phone number, all of it. And so he took that. And, he knows how to drive, and that's not a skill that he ever lost. That's natural to him. And like I said, he kind of comes and goes as far as his brain injury. But so he got her address, and he went there, and he killed her. Okay. And he brought her body back for Jason and for Pamela, because now he has his family unit together. Right. He's got her head on the shrine. He's got Jason there. And so he brought her back to show his family that, he had taken care of that. Okay. And then, let's see here. And then, so he made the shrine and everything. And then, so that kind of puts us to, Ginny, Paul, and all the other campers coming in,
Right.
And then they're all sitting around the campfire, and they're talking about the legend of Jason. Now, everyone was mistaken for Jason. The murders of 58. Now, this is all due to the fact, first of all, we're at child's camp.
Mm-hmm.
A boy drowned in the lake. Once that boy drowned in the lake, he became a legend amongst the camper kids. You know how kids are. It's the boy in the lake, and if he's not in the lake, then he's in the woods. That boy that drowned in the lake he's everywhere. Or whatever. So he became this big legend. So in the murders of 58 that went unsolved, were blamed on Jason. That was the boy in the lake. And then when Pamela killed everybody, while the people actually did find out who it technically was, it didn't matter. The legend. Yeah.
So here is the burning question. Everybody has their difference in opinions. I want the main man himself, the theorist, Troy Oelke, to help me with this one. Freddy or Jason, who won?
Jason.
Jason. That's my exact thought. Freddy might be winking at the camera,
because,
but...
I mean, what you did have is that, they had Freddy wink there at the end. But,
yeah.
That was Freddy's head that had just been chopped up by Jason, who was fully,
Right. Last question I got for you. Any other theories or anything about the storyline that I may have missed or that you want to, discuss and say about, expand on before we end the interview?
No, not really. Just that, Elias was actually the hooded killer. Roy was the father of Joey and Jason.
Nice.
And this all ties everything together. I do want to work a little bit, like I said, on the origin of Tina and possibly Tommy's father.
Okay.
And why there's such a connection between the two. Other than the fact, the only other obvious thing would be that the connection would be somehow if Jason had seen him in these masks that he wore, and had a little hideous face looking thing too, and I don't know.
Okay. So I would love to have you back once you get that part, we can kind of leave off where we left off and start into those things. It probably won't be as long of an interview. We've been having this interview for over 2 hours now. My longest interview I've had. My longest before this one was with Nancy McLaughlin, and it was an impromptu interview. I worked an 8-hour shift. I was 2 hours home from work, and she called me right when I pulled into my parents' driveway because I was visiting them for the weekend. So she called me right when I pulled in and said, "Scotty, I'm so sorry we missed the interview before. Can we set up another interview right now?" I'm like, "I just drove home for 2 hours after an 8-hour shift of work," but I'm like, "Why not?" And we had my first ever impromptu interview that went on for an hour and a half. And I was actually talking to her, and she wants to set up a phone call, not an interview or anything, but just kind of to catch up and everything. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, but yeah.
I'm trying to I'm trying to get all this together because I'm working on a book.
Yeah.
So I want to get this whole timeline fixed and all in a book, and still ironing out some of the later stuff like you and I just discussed.
Yeah.
And once I get those dialed in, though, hopefully then it'll be typing it out and then, double check for grammatical errors and all that crap. And then there you go.
Is the book already written? Most of it?
No, what I have is I've been doing video parts. I have a bunch of private videos that as I'm telling the story and I'm correcting things. And then someone might have a question, and whether the question goes against something that I said and I have to figure out how that works, or a question that I had not been asked before, hadn't even thought about, and so I'll put a theory behind that, and see if it matches up with any of the other stuff. And
nice. So did I give you anything that you have to look back at?
Well, I am going to check more into, like I said, the Tommy origin or Tommy's father, and the Tina origin, or her dad. Did she get her powers from her dad?
Okay.
Who is her dad? Where did he come from? And just trying to get more in depth into the later movies in the franchise, as in depth as I am in the first 5.
Right.
because I went in that order. So
Right.
I still got a lot to finish up on the other end there, and then get them all 100% connected, but they'll work. And so far, everything's coming together right nicely.
I really, really loved this interview. It was very insightful. It really showed me a lot as a fan myself of the franchise, kind of like where things, that didn't make sense in the Friday the 13th timeline and kind of narrow things down. Because, Friday the 13th Part 2 and Part 3 were basically the same day into the next day type of thing. And Jason has hair in one.
Was Saturday the 14th.
Exactly. Jason has hair in one and he's bald and exactly not long later, but thinking of it being Elias in Part 2 and Jason in Part 3, it, really carries things over, and it makes a lot more sense than, it originally did. Thinking of him with hair, literally, what did he do? Did he shave it off? You know what I mean? It didn't add up. So
yeah, exactly. It just answers, and the fact that I want to say it was a 6'6" versus a 6'2" or a 6'4".
Yeah.
So there was a huge difference in height, build, and again, Chris Higgins showed.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3 summers ago that he was wearing the same clothes he's wearing right now.
Exactly.
And that was all going on because just yesterday was the dude in flannel killed everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And got his shoulder hacked, and when he showed up and killed Harold, he was able to lift that arm and whack him with the meat cleaver or whatever pretty easily. He showed no scarring, no whatever, and of course it was the same clothes he's been wearing for years.
Right.
And since they steal their clothes basically off of clotheslines or just get them wherever they are, that doesn't happen very often. So you get your clothes, you just wear it forever until you have to go find something new.
Right. And you may have answered this question. I did have one more that I thought of. So, was Jason a boy when Friday the 13th Part 2 was happening with Elias killing, and how did he become an adult in Part 3 if that was the case?
Okay, so no, he was an adult.
Okay.
So when he washed up on shore in 1957, he was the boy that we all think of, the boy in the dream sequence, the boy. Now, that was 1957, 67, 77, 80. He was like 20, 22, 23 years old.
That makes sense.
By the time Part 2 was going.
Yeah.
So he would have been walking around in that green shirt, following his dad around, learning how to kill, how to trap, how to hunt.
Right.
And I think this would make the most amazing fan film because you could reshoot Part 2, everything. You could even rent the real house, but the wheelchair scene, all of it from a different point of view, where it's Jason watching Elias do it.
Yeah.
And then with the full, 4-story and all that, and then the Roy, but.
That'd actually be pretty cool. I heard that there's a fan film coming out. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but it's a prequel to Part 1, where they're gonna be. I just seen it on the Friday the 13th franchise.com website. Somebody is doing an Indiegogo, I believe, for it, and they're gonna explore the early life, the teen years of Pamela, up to her family life, her marriage, and into Jason's childhood up to his drowning. And into the deaths of from 1979.
In my story, I'm putting that in there too, and how she,
nice,
in the little town she grew up in, and then how she met Elias, and where she worked, and her aspirations, and then of course Roy at that time was young. He was like wanting to go to med school, so he was trying all this pre-med crap, but he ended up, as an ambulance driver instead,
right,
or paramedic, whatever.
Yeah. And I'm a filmmaker as well. I don't know if you followed any of my Gravestone Films posts or anything. We have our first movie coming out called Samhain. But even like a fan film of Friday the 13th, because obviously we can't make money off of it. But a fan film off of Friday the 13th based on these, and if you even, I don't know if I would do it, of course, but if I ever did, and I would obviously ask your permission if I could use any of your theories, and and maybe I would even recruit you as part of the scripting team and help me narrow it down. This would be, I would definitely give you as much credit as possible with it.
Where do you live at?
We live out in I live in Maryland, but the film company's based out of Ashland, Pennsylvania, which is where my parents and my family's from, and a lot of our local actors from my first movie are in.
I got a lot of friends that are shooting over there in that area.
Nice. Yeah. Do you ever hear of
I'm over
Centralia?
in Oregon. I was like, hope somebody be shooting around here sometime. I'd love to.
Yes. Did you ever hear of
Down there.
Centralia?
What?
Did you ever hear of Centralia, Pennsylvania?
I have not.
You have to look into the history of Centralia. You would be fascinated with Centralia. Centralia is like it's an underground mine fire, and basically think it's like hell coming to Earth. All the
Oh,
you ever hear of it?
I think, is this the one that they equate to like Silent Hill?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
We filmed some of my movie in Centralia. I live 5 minutes from Centralia.
Wow.
Yes. And every
What
time
a cool area to be able to backdrop.
Exactly, and we filmed in Centralia. There was a lot of places inside that we couldn't film on Graffiti Highway because that's no trespassing. We couldn't film in the graveyard itself because it's no trespassing. But there's a spot all the way behind the graveyard in the middle of the woods that people have bush parties and they do bonfires and that at. And we did our ending scene up there, and we did a couple of like scenes throughout the middle of the movie to the side of the cemeteries in Centralia. But it was very fun, and like we filmed the ending scene at like 12 o'clock at night in the woods of Centralia, and everybody was feeling so many ghost and spectral presence. It was crazy because it's a haunted place.
I shoot I do a lot of videos like skits,
right.
comedy horror skits.
Nice.
And but I have ideas for movies.
Nice.
Like two in particular, but so this last summer I decided to hell with it. I'm gonna go shoot this movie, and so all I had was my niece and her friend. It's a good friend,
nice.
And so what we did is we went to the and I have a nice camcorder, but I got two of them. They're 1080p, whatever. They're nice,
right.
but they're not like movie cameras, But
right.
so we went. I took her to the fucking. Oaks Park is the United States. I think it's the second largest like outdoor carnival type, whatever you call it.
Right.
Amusement park. And so we just went down there, and I acted like I was like filming my niece, with these camcorders, but so I could use that whole fucking carnival as a backdrop.
That'd
and
be
I got
awesome.
I bought foam axes and shit, and
Nice.
all this movie blood and everything. So I filmed half of it. Now, the first half that I filmed, I still have to film the death scenes that I insert in there, and then I have to film the second half, which is the big death scene. Everything. I got my buddy's got a fire truck.
Nice.
And we're going to use my other buddy's drone for a shot.
Nice. Yeah.
But I ended up. I just took what I had right now and I made a little fake trailer out of it, the Carney trailers.
Nice.
So I was using the camcorder and then making it look really vintage, putting lines in the film, making it look old, like Grindhouse, and it actually worked perfect with a camcorder to do that. But I hope to finish that this next summer. And
nice.
I also have been doing a lot of like voice work lately, which has been a lot of fun. I get a lot of people calling me to do like little fake trailers and stuff for them.
Nice.
I love that kind of thing.
That's awesome. That's great.
Check out, if you get bored, check out my playlist.
Sounds good.
Spam Chucker's Castle.
That's the last question I was going to ask. Anywhere you want people, anything you want to promote, anywhere you want people to find you, anything that you want to reach out?
YouTube, Spam Chucker's Castle.
Okay.
Just the best of playlist is where I keep all my skits and stuff. I am on Facebook under Troy Oelke, Oelke. However, I'm kicked off that profile at the moment. I'll be back on again. I get kicked off all the time for shenanigans, like all the time. So anyway, yeah, that's where most can reach me. I think I have an Instagram, but I don't hardly use it. I don't know what the hell the address is. On Twitter, I only go on there to troll people. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Check out Spam Chucker's Castle on YouTube. I actually got that name by throwing spam. I won a contest where I had to throw spam across the room and do a bucket, and I won.
Nice.
So they called me Spam Chucker Jones, and it stuck.
Nice. So after I turn off the stop recording and everything, I'll message you, and I'll let you know our Gravestone Films Facebook page and our YouTube page, and if you can give us a follow, I'll give you a follow on YouTube as well, because I know
Awesome.
Greg was telling me about all your videos, and I really wanted to get a chance to watch them. I haven't gotten a chance yet because I'm so busy with working and this pandemic going on, so I'm working from home, and because of
they're
this.
just goofy, no budget
Okay.
skits.
Yeah, sounds great. I would definitely look into them, and everybody else listening, go give them go look at them, follow them, get them a subscription on YouTube, and thank you, Troy, for
I will
coming
sub
on.
back.
What was that?
You bet. Thanks for having me, and I would. I was saying I'll sub anybody back.
Awesome.
Trade subs, but yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Yep,
I
not a
had a
problem.
really good time. You're fun to